Yeah, so welcome back. And in this video, now let's quickly look at some of the interventions that are done by the parties or by those institutions or even by those countries which give aid to developing nations. Now, please do keep in mind that no society is completely selfless. If one country is giving aid to another country, or if one society is giving help to another society, uh, there are some interests involved. Something is involved there for the society which is giving help to the underdeveloped society. These days, help is, especially economic help, is given through institutions which come broadly under the United Nations umbrella. Two of these institutions are called the Bretton Woods institutions. And they include the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. And the International Monetary Fund will give, first and foremost, it is an institution which is which is powerful to the extent, let's put it that way, it is powerful to the extent that it has its own currency. The International Monetary Fund has its own currency, which is called SDRs, special drawing rights. So it's a very powerful institution, and it gives loans to countries for economic adjustments. But these are loans, and they are given at a very high rate of interest. These institutions charge interest, and when they give the loan, they dictate policy to governments. They dictate policy regarding revenue collection. They dictate policy regarding tax. They dictate policy regarding how budgets will be constructed. So these are interventions that the International Monetary Fund carries out. Uh, every time you take their loan, you will have a meeting with their committee and with their president, with their head, and they are going to tell you what macroeconomic adjustments you have to make, so that you can be given help by this institution. There's not just economic intervention, there is also political intervention. So if one country is giving you help toward development, they might in extreme situations ask the society, ask the country that what kind of political system they should have, for example. So this is the picture of the Iranian prime minister in the 1950s. His name is Mohammad Mossadegh, and he was elected prime minister, and he tried to nationalize oil in Iran. But that was not something that was liked by those societies which were helping Iran to develop, and he was deposed by his own people, arrested, and then he was put in under house arrest for the rest of his life. So this is an example of a political intervention. Then there is cultural intervention, okay, in various ways, through cultural shows and through beauty pageants and stuff like that. Beauty pageants, there was a time when beauty pageants were not very well known in India, for example. Um, the the actor Amitabh Bachchan, he played a major role in bringing beauty pageants to India. And so this was like something which was um, taken. Now in the case of India, they took that feature from the West voluntarily. But in the case of other countries, this may be a form of cultural intervention where things are imposed by the countries who want to sell their products in these developing societies. So what we are saying here is that development then has a very Western style connotation. The connotation becomes very Western, and if you are to be considered developed, then you should have individualism in the country, democracy in the country, capitalism, scientific progress, a secular society, and stability, a society which is considered stable by the outside world. You also need to place a lot of emphasis on education. Now these are the good features. Every feature is not bad. The emphasis on education, modern education, no nepotism in the country. Things should be very based on merit completely, and the people should be considered hardworking. And this is something that I have noticed throughout. Whenever foreigners come to this country, they always praise us for being hardworking. I mean, why would anyone like to praise you for being hardworking? Because they consider it a sign of one of the preconditions for development. Now, let's look at some of the constraints on social development. What are some of the things that will constrain your ability to develop? The first are the geographic factors. Look at this country. Now, this country is Switzerland. Looks very much like, as far as the map is concerned, very much like Afghanistan, surrounded by other countries, surrounded by mountains. Okay, no access to the sea, many miles inland. It's a landlocked country, yet one of the most developed countries in the world, unlike Afghanistan. Even though the landscape may be similar, but the economy is not, the society is not. Switzerland is highly developed. And why is it developed? Because it took into account this constraint and it worked around it. Today, in 2017, of course, I don't have the figures of 2019, but in 2017, their GDP was 678 billion United States dollars. The per capita earning that year was 80,189, which means one household, if the GDP was divided over the households, one household was earning 80,189.7 dollars, as against $1,547 earned by a Pakistani household. So how did they do that? Look at the things that they developed, that they produced. They made clocks. I mean, clock was the classical clock. Whenever you thought of Switzerland, the product that came to mind was clock. Even though clock is only 7% of the GDP, but nonetheless, but they were producing precious metals, clocks, chemicals, all the things that do not require shipping. These are not heavy material. They can easily be exported, and even these things constituted only 25% of their GDP, 25% of their products. More than 70% of what Switzerland is producing is services, requires no transport facility. They have worked around that constraint of uh, being landlocked, and they have developed an economy based on that particular factor, on the importance of that particular factor. They have also invested a lot in human beings, development of human capacity, what is called the human capital, because only through the development of people can you provide good services to the world. Another thing which becomes a constraint is the government's attitude towards development. How does the government see trade? How does the government see aid? When was the last time you heard the Pakistani foreign minister visiting South America, for example? No, we do not look that far for trade or for the development of economic ties, whereas some countries, let's look at China, for example. China is going everywhere. It's going places. It's practically taken over Sri Lanka. It's practically taken over many places in Africa. They're going everywhere, and that is the reason why. So this is a constraint. What is the vision? The vision is always a constraint. The external constraint, of course, include the political relationships that countries have with other countries. Cuba, for example, is constrained by its constant rift with the United States, which has now been going on for the last, I don't know, since the 1950s. So it's been 6 decades, over 6 decades. Now, finally, we will come to the point of the economies in the world, the countries, the big production houses, the countries which are the production centers of the world, let's say. So you'll find two types of economies in the world. Some are called the core economies or the central economies. Now, these are economies of the developed nations. They are the developed countries of the world. These are the developed societies. They are characterized by very high production, not just production, but very high productivity levels as well. They may not have a lot of natural resources. They get their natural resources mainly from the underdeveloped countries. But then once they have those resources, they work so hard and they produce output at such high levels that the cost of production goes down and the profits become very high, and they become very, very rich. They become rich economies. So these are the core economies. And the core economies, when you talk about core economies, of course, the G7 is the classic example of the core economy. The massive economies. United States of America, $18 trillion economy. They produce goods worth trillions of dollars. Okay, then of course, then there's China, then there's Japan. These are countries that produce goods that are very high value goods, and the size of the economy is also massive. They are very large economies. They produce goods in very high quantities and goods that have very high market value. Okay, so these are the core economy, and a characteristic of the core economy is that they will put TNCs, transnational corporations, also called, sometimes called multinational corporation, but the proper name is transnational. These transnational corporations operate across borders. They go to underdeveloped countries and use their resources and produce goods and services. Now, the other economies are the socially less developed, and they are the peripheral economies. They are the lesser developed societies, and they depend on these core developed countries, and they depend on them not just for economic uh, economic in the economic sphere. They even ideologically they depend on them. They import their ideologies, they import their culture through magazines, through movies, through dress, from developed countries. They depend technologically on these developed countries. This, for example, is a picture from the 1950s, and the two persons on the left, one is the president of Egypt, Jamal Abdel Nasser, and the other person is the premier of the Soviet Union, Nikita Khrushchev. And the Soviet Union is giving Nasser, Egypt, a dam. It's helping them build a dam called the Aswan Dam. And in those days, it used to be said that Aswan Dam was the solution of all the problems of Egypt. It was a technological thing, for which Egypt relied on the Soviet Union. Uh, well, to some extent, it did solve some problems, but it was not the panacea that it was thought to be. It was not the solution to all of Egypt's problems. Yes, it did contribute a little bit, but the ideology also came from the Russians that this will solve all the problems. So the technology also came, and the ideology also came, and then the culture also comes. Look at these two women; these are both queens. Okay, but the person on the left, is an Arab queen. Her name is Rania. The person on the right is Letizia. She's the queen of Spain. But it's very difficult to say who is who. I mean, if the names are not written, and you don't know them by name, then it's very difficult to say which one is the European. Both look European. Why? Because Rania, who is the queen of Jordan, Jordan is a country that imports a lot of culture from the West. Likewise, technology is imported this technologically advanced car and this couple, this is not European. This is a couple in Lebanon. They have imported